Climate Change Adaptation by Roxanne Hunt. The objective of this presentation is to try to examine how the global community is living with and adapting to climate change. Climate change is an inevitable event that the world is currently undergoing. It has the potential to bring the global status quo to a grinding halt. However, instead of exhausting energies into trying to stop it, what if energies were spent on how to adapt to this dire situation? Let's try to examine this. I just went over my objective. I also want to touch on during this presentation a couple of predicted scenarios for greenhouse gas emissions and global surface warming, as well as population and urban settlements that exist within the vulnerable regions and coastal zones, and water productivity techniques, mainly irrigation, that's used and being considered to be used in combat of climate change, and what exactly the crops that it's being used for. In this figure, we see that global greenhouse gas emission levels, along with global surface warming levels, have been steadily rising since before the 1900s. But somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, these levels started to rise erratically in a less stable manner. So by the year 2100, when we reach our 22nd century, these levels will be extremely high. Some populations will be affected by this more than others. These populations generally live in areas that are adversely affected by climate change, and these areas are usually by the coastal zones throughout the world. They're known as lower elevation coastal zones, and New York City is one of these areas, as well as places in India. And as you can see on this slide, this particular slide, Asia has a high population that's living within these zones. Not only is their population high, but the urban portion of that population is equally high for that area. The small island states, which don't have as many people as Asia, still has a great amount or a greater percentage of people that live in those lower elevation coastal zones that's adversely affected by climate change. These urban settlements, just like here in New York City, are in existence because of the fact that people go to where they can find employment and or make a profit and or make a living. So the fact that the coast or the area of the sea is where a lot of water transport can be made, and a lot of people come in and out of, that's how it was from way back in the day, makes these urban settlements what they are today. And that's why they're in such a coastal zone that has such a lower elevation area. So how are we trying to, as a global community, adapt to climate change? One of the techniques that I read about is the use of water irrigation. Water irrigation is great in the sense that it is used as the main support of our main staple foods like wheat or grain, and that's basically what the world thrives on at this point in time, um, and what it has thrived on throughout history. So they cultivate our land and they try to irrigate the groundwater or the water that is in that community, and it's better than waiting for the water to run out. This way they have a better gauge on how the water is being used and how to use the water in a proper manner so that it can be conserved and used at proper times instead of using it just for the sake of using it. The crops that we mainly use irrigation for are usually high in protein. It's what, in general, um, has been used throughout centuries. Um, we have cereals and pulses. We have vegetables and starchy roots. This is what our specific water use for crops is for the meats and the dairy products per kilogram output and the energy value. So to sum it all up, our climate change is something that we're not going to get out of at this point in time. It's a perpetual state that we're in and that we'll probably always be in until it's run its course. The greenhouse gases and global warming are constantly on the rise and now more unstable than ever. There's also a considerable percentage of the world's population that exists within areas that are affected negatively by greenhouse gas levels rising and global warming on the rise. These areas are known as lower elevation coastal zones and have been built on the fact that built on or in existence because of the fact that they are urban settlements that are existing due to the fact that most people come to live in areas such as these that are by the coast because of how to get there and the opportunities that they can find while they're there. And also, in summary, water use efficiency is inclusive of irrigation, which mainly supports the production of our staple crops such as wheat and grain. And at this point in time, we are using it for specific crops that the world thrives off of. So, as you know, there are a few barriers in life that we go through. There will always be a few barriers that are encountered when addressing climate change. And a few of those would be changes of receptivity to the information, the threshold of concern, and the level of agreement on the goals and criteria of your options. But as we all know, barriers can be overcome with a change of thinking and a concerted effort together. And that's all.